Let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle. We now welcome Austin Barbour and Brandon Jones to our MPB studios. Austin is a Republican strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Brandon is an attorney and a former Democratic member of the Mississippi House. Gentlemen, welcome back to At Issue.
It's good to be here. Wilson, glad to have you.
We look to you, gentlemen, because we always have spirited discussions about what our legislature is doing and how it affects all of us. And let's start with this tax bill, House Bill 1, that has gotten a lot of attention here early in the legislative session. Austin, it's got a lot of moving parts, cuts here, additions there. What's your favorite part of it?
I guess my favorite part is sort of the transparency. Is I'm a process guy because I'm a campaign guy and I always have been, and I'm always fascinated by that. Fascinated by the strategy of how do you roll something out, how do you talk about something, how do you message something, and I think the Speaker and Trey Lamar have done a really good job with this. And to give some more specifics, they didn't wait to the last minute to do it. They rolled it out really early in the session. They talked about it in December. They probably talked about it well before December, but they more publicly talked about it in November and December, so people knew that it was coming. And that's a good thing. It gives the Senate a chance to think about this. It gives the governor a chance to think about this. And most importantly, it gives the members in the House a chance to go, wait, what's in this bill? How does it impact my city? How does it impact my county? How does it impact roads in my district, groceries, price of groceries in my district? What's it going to do for my voters? So I think they get a solid A. I won't give them an A+, but a solid A on sort of their strategy of how they have rolled this out and how they have messaged this. Look, Trey Lamar is, one of Jason White's top lieutenants. Trey Lamar is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And Trey is he's very specific in how he does things. He's very regimented. He's very smart. He gets people's attention in the Capitol when he stands up and talks. But I think they just deserve a lot of credit for sort of this step one of getting this package rolled out, Wilson.
Brendan, your Republican friends liking the transparency in the legislature.
Yeah, so I think it's important to orient listeners to where we are in the session. This is the second week of the session. This is the vision casting portion of the session. People are telling you what their personal hopes and dreams are for legislation. On a process point, for whatever good they may do internally in the House, these chambers still don't appear to talk to each other much. I mean, once again, we're going to have two different tax plans, the House plan and the Senate plan. You would think over the course of the last 8 months they might have worked on one together. They don't seem to be able to talk outside of session.
But that's not a bad thing. Two plans.
So that's process and transparency. I mean, the right hand doesn't still seem to know what the left hand is doing, but we're still, Wilson, getting a sense for what this actual package will be as it moves through the process. So what we do know is it'll take about $1 billion out of state coffers, that money we used to pay for roads and bridges, money we used to pay for schools, money we use for all of those different things that the state pays for, and we're replacing it with not really replacing it. Let's be clear. We're what the people who are pushing this bill are telling you is to be hopeful that we will replace it based on economic growth in the state. Now that's a little problematic because in the current fiscal year we are $81 million below estimates. So in this year where we're telling people to just trust us, we're going to have more money in the state coffers, we're actually behind. And when we take a further step back and look at what is in the state coffers now that's kind of fueling this excitement over where we are economically, that's a lot of federal dollars. A lot of the dollars that we are pointing at to say our economy is functioning well are dollars that came through over the last 4 years going back to COVID money. And so we know that those dollars won't be coming back. So what does this mean? Well, it could mean reductions in what we spend on these enormously important programs like education, like infrastructure. It could also mean the buck gets passed and we become a more regressive system. They've talked about taking away or reducing part of one of the highest in the country grocery taxes. It looks like we're going to raise taxes at the pump. Looks like we might raise taxes at sales tax. Well, that's a regressive tax. And what we mean by that is it punishes poor people as a percentage of their money at a greater rate than it does people with more. A progressive tax, which is what we've had, is one where people with more as a percentage of their income, they pay a little bit more into it based on what they have. So that's problematic. I don't know that Mississippi has the revenue to sustain a program like this. The other states who have programs like this are ones who, frankly, just have more sales tax and more people coming into the state on a regular basis. We're not Texas.
So they can
We're
afford
not
to do
Florida.
it. And you're saying Mississippi can't necessarily afford to do that.
We haven't demonstrated in the past that we can. And we don't have sort of a concurrent vision for where this economic growth is going to come from. So those are some of the concerning things. Again, we're still trying to figure out what this proposal is. But those are some of the things that folks like me are thinking about.
I would say the vision is the belief in the free market. The vision is that if we eliminate income tax, the state income tax that you pay, I pay, Wilson pays, everybody here who's earning a paycheck, the income tax that we pay, that money that we save, we will reinvest it. I will buy a new shirt. I'll buy a new car. I'll buy a new wash machine. As a business owner, I'll create another job. That is the vision of how we would do it. I won't be long-winded because you may want to respond right back to that.
Well, I mean, for young listeners, that's an example of what we call trickle-down economics. And what we know about trickle-down economics is that it's never worked in the United States. It's never worked in any particular state within the United States. And here we are going to try it again. I mean, Austin, I'll just tell you, I know you're being sincere. I find all that to be nonsense.
Yeah. But Brandon, if you give me more money, if I have to give the government less money, I'm going to spend most of that because this is me personally as a business owner and as a father, as the head of my household. I promise you, if I get to spend less money to Washington or to Jackson, I'm going to spend a good bit of that. I'm going to reinvest that back into the economy. But there are other parts of this bill. Obviously they want to eliminate over 10 years the personal income tax that we have to pay. They're going to try to reduce the grocery tax. There's a local sales tax that goes back to municipalities. They're going to make that whole. Actually, they're going to give them a little bit more. They are also going to raise the fuel tax. Fuel tax right now is 18.5 cents. I think it's been like that for a generation or more. The increase would be 5% sales tax, which would produce $400 million for MDOT, which is badly needed. I have fought for a lot of local clients over massive infrastructure projects that's needed, so I'm glad to see that they're doing that. The total net tax cut is $1.1 billion. And so you and I are friends, and we just are on the opposite side of this. But again, this is one chamber. This is the House plans, and I kind of interrupted you. I didn't specifically mean to. The Senate's going to have their own plan, okay? And the Senate's may look just like this. It may not look just like this. But I think that's a good thing. Let's hear from both sides, and then let's try to continue to lead and work on tax reform.
If I may, Wilson, he made an important point. There is tax hikes in this plan. I mean, if you pay for gas, you're getting a tax raise.
That's true.
If you pay for any product that you buy in a sales tax context, then you're getting a tax hike. So there will be more Mississippians whose taxes are raised by a per person, indicator than there will be people whose taxes are lower. Because not everybody pays income tax in Mississippi. You have to make a certain threshold, but everybody goes and buys a stick of gum. Everybody goes and gets gas. And so there will be more people whose taxes are raised than lowered, which is why we call it regressive. And so that's an issue that I think we need to make sure that we highlight is, yes, we're calling this the Great Tax Reduction Bill of 2025. Well, for most of you, your taxes are going to go up. And those are going to hit the people who are probably the poorest in the state and the least capable of dealing with that increase.
Well, it would reduce and ultimately look to completely do away the taxes that are paid on groceries. People like to call the grocery tax. It's a sales tax when you go to the grocery store. Everybody buys groceries. So, listen, there's no perfect plan. You know that, and I know that. And I'm just proud that they have put forth this in a very transparent way. I look forward to seeing what the Senate comes forth, because I know they're talking about their own plan.
I got a quick question. I'm sorry, I got one more question. So what would you say, Austin, to somebody who asked, the last time that we passed a major tax reduction, we said we're going to give it 3 years to phase in. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're in year 2.
I don't know.
Of the 3-year phase in. So what would you say to someone who said, I thought y'all said we were going to wait and see how this performs based on your economic theories and then decide if we wanted to make a deeper commitment to this philosophy? It strikes me as odd that we're 66% of the way through the last cut. We're not performing up to where we want to be in terms of tax revenue this fiscal year. And now we're going to fully commit to this wing and a prayer kind of concept. I mean, for some of us, that's not fiscally responsible. That's a lot of hoping and praying and wishing for something that frankly hasn't happened in our state before.
Yeah, it's a good question. And what I would say is we've got a record amount of money in rainy day funds. We've got a record amount of money, billions of dollars in capital expenditure funds that if for some reason, we're like, this didn't go great in year 2, we have money there to sort of help us get through this if it does hit a bump. And what would I say? Well, as you said, we're only if you're right and we're year 2 of year 3, like, hell, man, it's going well. Economy's great. I mean,
thanks, Joe.
I mean, we're in a good situation right now, so let's do more. And that is the philosophy. That's the mentality of a lot of the leaders in the legislature, and we'll be talking about this the whole session.
Austin, you mentioned that the Senate will come up with their own plan as well. Do you have any intel as to what that plan will include?
I mean, only thing that I know is what Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann has said, and he said it in the Stennis lunch, the Stennis Press Forum Capitol lunch. Let me get the full name right. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, where he said, "Look, I am for getting rid of the 4% down to 3% threshold." For personal income tax. So he's already said, look, that's 25% of what we would have to pay in income tax. So that's what he's come out with, and he certainly has also said that he wants to do something about the taxes paid on groceries. And
what's the difference? I know the governor has called for full elimination of the state income tax, but what's the difference in paying less in state income in state income taxes and grocery taxes or sales taxes? Why is it more beneficial to pay less in income tax than it is in sales taxes?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. I mean, I'm getting paid tax on the work that I do. I mean, we should reward people for going to work. Obviously, I get paid. My income is based on me going to work or you going to work. So let's try to motivate people and inspire people to go work and not have me or you or whomever, I'll speak for myself, every time I have to write that quarterly check or the once a check, dadgummit, here I'm out working and earning this money, and I got to send it to Jackson and I got to send it to Washington. Look, I mean, there are some taxes that are obviously needed to fund the government, but it's always that debate about what's that number.
And I just have such a different worldview on this. I mean, you get what you pay for in life, and that money you're talking about is what we use to defend ourselves as a country. It's what we use to provide school lunches to children who, through no fault of their own, can't otherwise have food that day. It's what we use to pave roads and bridges. It's what happens whenever there is a natural disaster, like what's happening in California right now, when we send money to that. We can't send best wishes. We have to send money. And so money is what governments use to answer all the problems. I mean, that's what we tell people all the time. The government has very few tools outside of resources. And Mississippi is a historically cash-strapped state that has had a hard time paying its bills and has had a hard time meeting its obligations to its citizens. And so now we're cutting that revenue, telling people, well, you've made this, you earn it. Yeah, but you also live in a state. And you also do have some collective responsibility. Do you want a road? Well, who pays for that? That's us. That's that check you're talking about. Well, we want you to write that check because that's how we pay for roads. If you don't write that check, there's no other place it's coming from. And historically, the way we've answered that question is we've kind of shirked our personal responsibility in Mississippi, and we've counted on the federal government to bail us out. Well, everyone listening to this should be aware that's your tax dollar too. And so it's just an odd kind of shell game. And we haven't even mentioned yet, if I'm a mayor right now, I'm looking at this with a little bit of skepticism because I'm sitting here thinking, all right, what happens to the holes in my budget? If y'all are, I'm going to have to raise taxes at the local level.
Yeah, but they're not going to. And I've talked to several mayors about this. Here's the reality. There's 7% that we all pay on sales tax, okay, unless there's additional taxes, but let's just use a 7% tax. Of that 7%, okay, 18.5% of that 7% stays home in Jackson or Pascagoula or whatever the city is, okay? So what the legislature has said is we're not going to send you that money home anymore. That 18.5%, the full 7%, it's coming to Jackson, okay? It's going to the general fund. But what we're going to do is...
Jackson, you mean by
I'm
the state.
sorry. That's right, the general fund, the state of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. But what we're going to do is to help make sure you don't have any holes in your budget is we're going to take the sales tax from 7% to 8.5%.
We're going to let you raise your sales tax locally.
Yes, it's going to be 8.5%. So that difference... it's actually if we got a piece of paper out and we started writing the numbers down, the additional 8.5 up to 8.5, 1.5% sales tax, taking it from 7 to 8.5, is going to be more money for Pascagoula or Pearl or Picayune than the 18.5% that they get right now.
But you see what just happened. Now your legislator is stepping away from it, but the mayor still got to explain why the taxes are getting raised at the local level. I mean, there still is a taxing thing going on here, and it's which politician is going to get responsibility for doing it.
Well, it's not going to be the locals. The way this bill is written, if it gets passed, that 8.5% is going to happen. You will not have to have a local referendum.
But they can opt out of it, can they not?
I think there's an opt-out language in there, but I need to confirm that.
Well, I would be careful being a mayor cheerleading this and saying, well, I'm all for it, boys, and then the taxes go up locally. I think there's going to be some consequences.
Well, listen, there's trade-off. Again, we said, look, you can shoot holes in this all day long. There's trade-offs of trying, and that's why it's called tax reform, and that's why it's called the legislative session, because they will debate it and they'll try to get to a perfect place as best they can.
Let's move on to Medicaid.
Let's sell taxes, for 31 minutes.
Medicaid expansion came up a lot in the last session, and ultimately we didn't get a bill, or they didn't pass a bill that brought it about, but there was lots of discussion about it, and there will be no doubt this year. How are things going to be different under a different administration in Washington, potentially with the former head of Mississippi Medicaid running the program on the federal level? Austin?
Yeah, so let's put a name behind that. Drew Snyder it's out there in the press as being considered by the Trump administration to come work for CMS to run the Medicaid program for every state that's got a Medicaid program, which would be all of them. That's phenomenal for Mississippi. I know Drew. We all know Drew. Super smart guy, Ole Miss grad, I think law school UVA, brilliant guy. Ran Medicaid consecutively under two different governors, Governor Bryant, Governor Reeves, very well thought of. That's a hard position to have legislators like you, and he was successful in that because he did a really good job. So if he is running Medicaid for the entire country, that's a good thing for Mississippi to have someone that we can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, how do we do this? Help us with this. Where's this going? But specifically for the legislature, I don't think they will tackle the Medicaid expansion issue until there is certainty from the Trump administration about is there that guarantee that the federal government will cover 90% of the total cost if Mississippi decided to expand Medicaid.
Yeah. We do this a lot, and I think this happens across the country. Whenever one of your own is named to an important position, we kind of cheer that on. This is probably okay if you're a Mississippian looking for commander's tickets, but I don't know that it's that great if you're a person who's relying on the system of Medicaid to cover your health care cost. Every time that Mr. Snyder was called upon to make a judgment call about this program, he made the call towards reducing, and we suffered because of it. The issues with the Mississippi Department of Medicaid have been pretty well chronicled. And then he injected himself politically into the conversation about expansion of Medicaid. And so, again, you have someone who's running a program that philosophically believes there should be less of a program. And that's problematic in a place like Mississippi, where we have at least 200,000 people who right now do not have access to health coverage that could have it if we just simply bought into the federal plan. And so, yeah, this isn't exciting to me because we saw what it was like here, and we saw that we didn't expand while other states expanded, and he was a big part of that. And so the notion that he might somehow help the 8 or so remaining states across the country find their way into this program, I don't know if that's the case. And obviously he'll be an administrator, not a policymaker, but I don't share Austin's enthusiasm about this selection.
Yeah, I don't think he had anything to do with whether we expanded or not. He's, as you said, he's the administrator of the program, and his job is to administrate and use the funds as best he can in the most efficient way to take care of the people who are on the program.
On the subject of school choice, this came about, a couple of years ago in the form of vouchers, where you could get a special needs voucher for your child to go to a different school using public school money because you were in a position where you needed it. Now, there are more proposals to have more choices when it comes to school. Austin, how far do Republicans want to take school choice?
Well, we'll see. I mean, the Senate position is a little more out there than the House position on this. They both are want to do things, want to continue to work on policy issues to make our schools more competitive, to continue making our schools improve. If we've seen over the last 10 years, our schools are testing, our public schools are testing better than they ever have, or at least in multiple generations. And these men and women at the legislature on both sides, Republican and Democrat, are trying to figure out more ways to do it. These are going to be controversial issues. They're going to be hotly debated, and the one coming out of the Senate would give, as far as I understand, and I hadn't seen the language, would give a student, a family, the opportunity to transfer from whatever school district that they're in into another school district. The way the law has always been is both schools. The one that's your kids, if your kids at let me just use Gulfport, Biloxi. Sorry, just to be easy. If your kid's at Gulfport, the way the law writs is Gulfport had to say, yes, it's okay for Wilson Stribling to go to Biloxi, and Biloxi had to accept him.
Both schools, the one you're leaving and the one you're going to have to agree.
The way I think the Senate plan will be is only the one to where you are transferring would have to agree.
The receiving school.
The receiving school would have to agree. And so there'll be a lot of debate about that. But the reason the Senate wants to do this is they want to give parents and they want to give kids as many opportunities to get into what is the best school for them.
Brandon?
Austin referenced some of the progress that's been made in the classroom, and certainly I would add to that teacher pay raises. We still have a little ways to go on that, but
that's exactly right.
We've raised those a few times. I mean, honestly, I would prefer to see us continue the momentum of funding, continue the momentum of bringing our teachers within the national and regional average, and continue to bolster strong public schools. That is one of the primary tools that our states have to improve the next generation and to improve the next generation of citizens and voters and people who are going to lead this state after we're all gone. And so I am have long been concerned. You may remember I used the word Trojan horse. I said that the last year's bill was a Trojan horse for complete school choice. It was also a Trojan horse for a 100% voucher program. I think this year, I hate to say it, but I think I was pretty prophetic. We knew exactly where this was going. Jason White wants 100% school choice. He also wants 100% school vouchers. And this is part of their agenda. And we just need to be honest about that. Now, I thought it was interesting in the clip that you played, he said, we'll see where the citizens of Mississippi land on this. We don't have a ballot initiative right now, so I don't know exactly what that means. But I do know that one of the things that we agree on, Republican and Democrat, for the most part, is a strong public school system.
Yeah.
So I think he's actually on the losing side of this argument if he really wants to take that case to the Mississippi public. Most Mississippians who are informed on this issue do not want 100% school choice. and they don't want a fully fledged voucher program.
I have never heard him come out and say, I want a fully funded, fully fledged voucher program, and I've not seen that language either. I do not think that would work. I have not seen him. I have not heard that. Chairman Dennis DeBar, who's the Senate Education Chairman, Senator Rob Robertson from Starkville, who's the House Education Chairman, they're going to work hard on this. These are good guys, smart guys who care about this issue. This will be an interesting debate to watch happen.
In our remaining time, I'd like to hear from each of you on what you hope will come out of the legislative session this year. Brandon, let's start with you.
Well, a little bit less
You're
of all the
smiling.
things we've just been talking about. Yeah, look, this is early days. I would love to see us restore the ballot initiative process. I feel like that's something that most Mississippians feel like is a good idea. It's one of the ways that states like ours address some of these thorny issues. So I'd love to see that.
I agree with you.
Get some
100%
new
on
life.
that. Yeah.
I'd love to see us expand Medicaid. I mean, if it's such a big deal that we've got one of our own in that department, then why not prove what a big deal it is by doing it quickly and saying, well, I got the guy on the phone. I know what the program is. I think all this hemming and hawing about, well, we just don't know what it's going to do. You just told us we got the director of it to ask him. I assume he knows what it's going to do. So we need expansion of Medicaid because we have hundreds of thousands of working Mississippians that need access to that program. And Austin, continuing the progress that we've made in some other areas, like continuing to bring teacher pay raise up, bringing that to the top of the regional average. That's a good thing. This legislature has done a good job of that over the last few sessions, and congratulations to them for that. Keep that momentum going. And, I wish they would take a more circumspect view on the tax stuff because, like I said, I think we're still in early days of the last one. I'm not sure that it's been proven to be successful. And so just to be careful, because one thing that we should all remember here, it's pretty easy to cut taxes. It's one of the easier things that elected politicians can do. What's hard is to get that money back once you've given it away. And I would just ask people to take a look at Kansas and Louisiana, who did something that was kind of a far-reaching tax cut. It only took a matter of months before both of those states were in a serious state of what we would call almost bankruptcy for a state. And those politicians had to go back to their state capitals and overhaul their system again. And I would just look at that as a cautionary tale to our state leaders and say, do we really want to put our state, Mississippi, and its history in this area into that kind of tough position?
We have a ton of momentum going on in Mississippi right now. We have the two largest economic development projects in the history of our state that have both been announced in the last 6 to 9 months. Governor Reeves has clearly set how he's going to be viewed when he's long gone as governor, as this is a guy who brought big time economic development projects to our state and high paying jobs. We have really smart men and women in both chambers on both sides of the aisle, in both the House and the Senate. I'd like to see them work together. That's the sort of how I see that coming right now on the issues that matter, on all the issues that we've discussed. There are kind of two populist issues that are out there. Populist is not the right way. Sort of underground popular. You mentioned the ballot initiative. It certainly is. I think the House is going to probably move forward first. We'll see what the Senate does. But there's a gaming issue that if mobile sports gaming, which is just the ability for you to be able to bet on a pro game on your phone. That's an issue that hasn't been able to get over the finish line over the last couple of years. But those are issues that sort of everyday folks talk about that are not real complicated. They're not education reform or tax reform. So I think those are issues that people will be paying attention to, and 100,000 other ones that will pop up between now and the end of March.
So that's what you'd like to see. Austin Barbour, Brandon Jones, great to be back with you guys. Enjoyed it very much.
Really good. Thank you, Wilson.
Glad you're here.
Look forward to this every week now. This has been At Issue, a weekly discussion about the 2024 Mississippi legislative session, or the 2025 legislative session. You can hear At Issue every Friday night at 6:30 during the session on MPB Think Radio. You can also subscribe to our At Issue podcast, which features extended versions of our roundtable discussions and featured interviews. And if you'd really like to see what we all look like, catch the video versions of our roundtable and interviews on mpbonline.org and on YouTube. At Issue is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting. I'm Wilson Stribling. From all of us at MPB, thanks for joining us.